Here we go.
The old cliche is that war never changes.
Lord have
but what
mercy. Why?
happens when the hellish actions of war manifest as monsters that trap
Oh, is that what
people
that's
in
for?
time loops of their worst deeds? Well, even then, it turns out the cruelty of mankind itself are still worse than any supernatural destruction, and hellisus uses its fantastical, near-future setting to take a dark, authentic look at the horrors of war. While the actual act of fighting your way through the monsters of this devastated nation isn't doing much that's new to the action-adventure genre, hellisus kept me entertained throughout my 38-hour adventure nonetheless.
That's kind of what I feel whenever I'm playing it. I'm like, the puzzles and all the lore that you can find laying around, they add like a different kind of aspect to it. I really appreciate it. I didn't think that I was going to like that it doesn't have like a waypoint, but you get a compass and you press like down on the D-pad and then you could pull it up at any time and then it goes away. But most people are like, if you go southwest or southeast from my location or from here, then it pretty much is like the same thing.
Its combat is simple but satisfying, and its world is full of puzzles that push you to really...
I do really appreciate that they didn't have to, for whatever reason, these newer Souls-like games that are coming out, they do something weird with the combat to make it harder. You don't have to do that. Gamers aren't buying these games because they're hard. They're buying them because they feel like whenever they complete something or they level up, they're getting something out of it. Like when you take all the souls back after you beat a really hard boss and you level up and you could like pretty much two-tap the boss, that's what makes it worthwhile. It's the rewarding factor of beating the boss and knowing that you're about to get a lot stronger. Or you get a boss weapon even. That's incredibly like ridiculous.
Pay attention, which makes for a campaign filled with intrigue, grief, and sometimes a little frustration.
I will say that I was getting kind of frustrated with the health system, because anytime you take damage, it also lowers your stamina. And when it gets to about like right here, you're better off just dying. Seriously. It's like almost impossible to raise the health bar back up because every time you swing, you have to like back off and hope the enemy doesn't hit you so you could heal.
hellisus is equal parts exploration, combat, and...
Sekiro's definitely on the list. I want to play Sekiro because I've heard a lot of good things about Sekiro. I haven't heard a lot of things about Nier. That's kind of the reason why I was just like, no, I think I'm good.
And puzzle solving. It's a
I haven't heard
familiar
anything about that.
formula if you've played games like God of War or Resident Evil before, but roaming the
This
fiction
game is like neither. Lady, what planet are you on where you play this game and you think it's like God of War? What? Huh? Oh man, this review's gonna be fucked. I already know. I already fucking know this review's about to be fucked.
country of Hadia
Bro.
as Remy, an exile smuggled out of the country as a child, proved to be a different kind of challenge. You're told up front that there is no map, waypoint system, or indication of where to go next. I had to retrain my brain in the early hours of hellisus as I adapted to how it does things.
Why is this so fucking surprising? Dark Souls didn't have this. Why is this so hard to understand? It's not even that complicated. You just explore and get used to the map. The maps aren't even that big. Come on. Like, what? Seriously?
Like I was riding a bike without training wheels for the first time. While frustrating at first, that
Just find everyone you can in the map and talk to them. That's pretty much what you did in the original Dark Souls games. You talk to the guy at the very first bonfire, Firelink, and he's like, there's 2 bells, and then that's it. Then you have to find the 2 bells. And it's crazy how that genre blew up into fucking the Souls-like genre. But for whatever reason, God forbid, another fucking game comes out that's like, oh, it doesn't have a map. Oh, God! The fact that they even have to put a warning thing at the beginning saying it doesn't have a map blows my fucking mind. I didn't hear anybody bitching about that whenever Dark Souls was around. Like, get the fuck out of here with this.
seemed to fade
Seriously,
away
like what? How have we digressed as humans? Seriously, how stupid.
midpoint of Act 1, and I could feel myself more quickly pinpointing the necessary clues I needed to progress. What starts as a quest for answers about Remy's missing family, his whole reason for returning to Hadia, quickly becomes a series of puzzles and scavenger hunts that reveal a bigger picture. With both that mystery and a large number of items to collect, the lack of a traditional map or waypoint system meant I found it almost mandatory to keep physical notes on what I had seen. That was especially true as I assembled a lengthy list of puzzles and NPCs that required specific items I had yet to find, with some items that wouldn't even become available until later portions of the story. At first, I was caught off guard by how front and center the puzzle component is in hellisus. Not because I disliked them, but because it just wasn't what I expected going in. There are plenty of
There's a lot of fucking puzzles. There is, like, you'll finish a puzzle, and then it'll lead to another puzzle. Or there's, like, a puzzle, like, for example, you get paintings, and you have to put them up on a wall to get a key code, right? But the thing is, like, you have to put them in a certain order, which is one puzzle. After you find them, which is another puzzle, then you have to figure out the key code, which is another puzzle. Because it's not just like a bunch of numbers lined up. It's like, you know, first, second, and third. What happened first, what happened second, what happened third. And you got to find all the, like, paperwork and documents for that.
Puzzles to solve with all the usual suspects represented, aligning symbols to open doors.
So, like, the puzzles aren't, like, super simple. They're kind of complex.
Delivering specific items to NPCs, deciphering safe codes, finding color-coded keys, stepping on...
I actually solved one of these puzzles by accident. I found one of them in like the second area of the game, and I walked over to it and I spinned like two of the. I rotated that one, and then I walked away, and then I came back and I rotated the one to the right, but it wasn't this one, and then it just opened up, and I was like, oh, hot damn,
plates and more.
That's some good shit in it too.
While I've only solved about 3/4 of them so far, most solutions have ranged from obvious to mild head scratchers. This is a nice place for them to land because
That's
there
the
are
first
a lot of
one.
things to keep track of on
Remember,
your
boys, I solved that in the demo.
own at
That was
once,
easy.
But I never got stuck in one place for too long, and the rewards typically were worth the effort. The only mildly frustrating part of some puzzles is that you don't always know if you have everything you need to solve them, or if certain key pieces are even available yet, as many items don't show up until you progress further.
Thank you for returning it.
That would usually be such a minor inconvenience that it wouldn't even be worth mentioning. However, because hellisus takes pride in not automatically tracking the specifics of stuff like quests and puzzles,
You want to read everything you pick up. You want to read it at least once.
if you don't keep detailed notes, or if you happen to take a few days off from playing, it can lead to running around in circles searching for an unknowable solution. Speaking of running in circles, while the first act is initially pretty straightforward, I found myself getting a bit lost after a few hours. Without a map, it was tough to figure out where I had and hadn't been. You can't progress to new locations without uncovering specific clues or NPCs that give you information about those zones, so I began to lose steam towards the midpoint of Act 1. However, this pain point completely went away in the following 2 acts thanks to the combination of more characters that reliably offer information about the quest, and my own acclimation to how I was meant to decipher the breadcrumbs of the story. As Remy, you are a first-hand witness to hellisus themes of hate, violence, brutality, and humanity being its own worst enemy. They are seen in every NPC conversation,
I will say that the game is very graphic. It is very graphic. Like, you come across a tree and there's a bunch of kids being hanged. Like, they're already, like, gonzo. So, like, if you're not for that, then this game is not for you. Like, this game is probably the most graphic thing that I've seen in a minute. Been a minute since I've seen a kid get, like, you know, in a game.
And piece of lore you find on the search for Remy's.
But it is a war zone. So, like, they don't hold any punches. They show it for what it is, and I really appreciate that.
Family. You would think that the worst of what you have to face are the hollow
There it is.
monsters
That's the
plaguing
tree.
streets and
That's the tree.
countrysides of Hydia, but if history has told us anything time and time again, our worst enemies are always ourselves. It wasn't those haunting enemies that stuck with me past the credits, but the imagery of the world, the harrowing events described by its survivors, and the vitriol characters often had for one another. It's almost impossible not to draw parallels between the horrors portrayed throughout Remy's journey and current events.
I'm not gonna lie, the game is clunky. It's really clunky. It plays a lot like a PlayStation 2 game, but it's got, like, super updated graphics. But for me, that's kind of like, that's not really a negative to me. That's more of a positive because it shows that it has a type of charm, if anything.
happening in the real world. Hadia's towns are ravaged by war, filled with imagery of civilian executions and propaganda as two fictional races of people, the Palamists.
I agree. I feel like a game being open world is a tool in the toolbox, just like a game being linear is a tool in the toolbox. I think that I would prefer an open world game, but I would also like to say that it depends on the style of the game.
And Sabinians constantly blame the other for everything wrong in the
Like,
world.
for example, Black Myth Wukong, I would have preferred if that game was less linear and more open world. Because, I mean, like, let's be honest here, Black Myth Wukong was incredibly linear. It had invisible walls everywhere. But that didn't really take away from the charm of the game.
Add in the rise of those terrifying new
It
hollow
would have enhanced it.
creatures which are impervious to traditional weapons, and it culminates in a believable alternate history with horrors rooted in our own.
You know, I would like to say that I got I'm actually in this area and I've almost done everything in it. The great sword, whenever you're doing that spinning attack, the AoE for it is like times 10. It's great.
Terrifying new
That is completely useless with those axes. But
hollow
whenever you have the
creatures
great sword and you start spinning, dude, I must have like wiped at least like 7 mobs doing that.
which are impervious to traditional weapons, and it culminates in a believable alternate history with horrors rooted in our own.
Person don't even know how to play the fucking game. You see
In
what
a
they're doing there?
believable alternate
They're like
hollow
parry
creatures which are
spamming.
impervious to traditional weapons, and it culminates in a believable alternate
I will say that the screen is a little bit cluttered. And what I mean by that is like, for
history with horrors
example,
rooted in our own.
this. When that happens, I can't see shit. I can't see a goddamn thing. Whenever your enemy attacks clutter the screen like this, and it's in a third person where the camera's kind of poopy, it does add frustration on top of it. I'll say that.
Hellisus wears its grim view of a collapsed civilization and its struggling population on its sleeve. Every major NPC can be asked about Hadia, the war, peacekeepers, the hollow creatures, and both the Palamists.
That's the best thing you can do, because like this is also dialogue. Where's my mouse? This is dialogue, and this is also dialogue. Is every time you find a new NPC, just ask a bunch of questions. Like ask all the questions. Just gray them all out.
And Sabinians. And unlike the obscure puzzles and riddles throughout the world, the characters speak plainly about their feelings on each topic, be that a young girl who calls everyone on the other side murderers, or a member of the military who has no issues whatsoever.
I think it's... Yeah, so it's the Palamists and the Sabanians. They are at war with one another.
With collateral damage.
When you have a cockroach problem in your home,
Yeah.
you don't negotiate with the vermin to leave. You exterminate them.
While these conversations won't progress any storylines or assist in side quests, they all help to paint an effective picture of the current state of the world and how it came to be.
We need to progress. The only way to achieve greatness is to rid ourselves of the Palamist swine.
These conversations were enlightening, but they are also tough to swallow in today's world, especially when myself and many others use video games as a means of escapism. There were times when it often felt like too much, but the thought of ignoring these kinds of experiences felt cynical and disrespectful to those enduring similar tragedies daily. Even minor NPCs
Well, now that she's opened up the can of worms, I'm going to put the can of worms back where they belong. So, let's pick this apart. So first and foremost, you're full of shit, lady. Nobody is dealing with this in today's society. You know why? Because everyone involved is either dead or they're currently fighting back. So I would assume she's referring to the town that you get to, Hadia. Whenever you get there, the town had already been ravaged by it was the other faction, the Sabina whatevers. the colonel she was talking to that said that the Palamists were cockroaches was the one that had already taken over the town, so everything that happened there had already happened. I would assume what she's trying to make a connection to, and this might be going off on a limb, is whenever you decided to put these woke, creepy, weird-ass characters into these games that actually tied to what's going on in America and real-world situations in current time, well, was. Thankfully, that's changed now, for obvious reasons. And you trying to compare these two things makes me sick to my stomach to the point where I want to violently throw up. Because this tells me everything I need to know about games journalists and about how fucking useless they are. Let me guess, you're gonna give the game a 6?
He struck a chord as I encountered a small settlement of survivors, many of whom have lost families, limbs, and more. Hellisus never strays away from showing the cost of war.
You know what's even crazy? If you remember Rambo, First Blood Part, actually any of them, you see his struggles with what had happened in Vietnam, and whenever he goes to Afghanistan, and I believe the third movie, or whenever he goes to, I think it's Thailand, in the second movie, you see all these images, you see all these people that have gotten fucked up from the war. I didn't really hear anybody bitching and complaining when that movie was making millions of dollars. Maybe they're not comparable.
And it's better for it. These tragedies aren't just there for show either, as they also feed into the important time loop mechanic. Time loops appear as concentrated spheres of negative energy derived from truly heinous actions.
So does that mean that anytime there's a crime that's committed in a game, that you're gonna feel the same way? So anytime there's a crime whatsoever, you know, like if you're playing Grand Theft Auto and you walk up and shoot somebody, does that make you like feel disrespected if you don't pay more attention to it? So like, you know, so you don't want to not deal with it because it's happening in the current world, so you're just gonna leave and walk away from it, and you know, I imagine you wouldn't bring that up if you were playing Grand Theft Auto.
Public executions, murder, and other tragic events, and they can only be cleared by removing an area of its time loop guardians. Though most are optional, clearing them provides rewards like key items for certain puzzles or NPCs and various weapon upgrades, and also stops enemies from respawning in that vicinity, which was enough incentive for me to tackle them when convenient. The Guardians appear as regular hollow enemies at a glance, but are slightly tougher fights due to their higher health and attack power. Although more often than not, they were still so easy, I would only realize I had just faced a Guardian after the fact. So they didn't stand out as meaningful or memorable fights to match the somber moments around them.
I'll admit that even it is the first area though that some of the enemies do feel a little laxed. I wouldn't change that because I'd imagine it gets a lot harder the more you go. That is the first area.
Combat not quite scratching the itch I
think there's like 4 weapons. There's like 4 weapons you get. There's the polearm, the double axes, the one sword, and then the great sword. And that's it.
It was a consistent theme throughout most of Hellisus. It has all the staples you'd expect in an action-adventure game: attack combos, charge attacks, parries, dodges, and special abilities that improve both your weapons and a drone that fights alongside you. But while it has the ingredients of a great combat system, they never come together to make something more impressive than the sum of its parts. That isn't to say combat is bad in any way, because it can still be quite fun, but it never really wowed me either. Even the executions for certain enemies, which shift the camera perspective in an attempt to punch up the stylishness of those moves, didn't amaze me despite being functionally useful.
I agree. It's useful because if you were to take out the blob that, you know, this thing that's sitting outside of the mob, you can't kill the enemy until you take the life away from the mob, the blob, this thing. And then it goes back into the enemy, and then you could do damage. But if this enemy is at full health, and it has this X stun attack thing, you can insta-kill it. See how much health it had? Just kill it.
Early on, Remy learns that standard weapons are useless against the hollow enemies, and quickly builds up an arsenal of limbic weapons with special properties. Swords, twin axes, polearms, and more, each with their own strengths and weaknesses.
I don't really like, I'll say that as well. I'm not a big fan, 'cause I'm
polearms,
still
and
playing
more,
it. How these mobs are able to get so far away from you so fast.
each with their own
It
strengths.
really makes for frustration whenever your health is like down to here, because your stamina and your health both go down to here. It's like a connected bar.
and weaknesses. As you explore and solve various puzzles or help the citizens of Hydia, you
Welcome
unlock
back.
glyphs that can be equipped to weapons to augment them with properties such as rage, ecstasy, terror, and grief. Upgrading weapons with different properties will not only change their appearance, but also change which abilities they can equip. I was a big fan of Rage as it supercharged my aggressive playstyle, allowing me to stagger enemies and giving me some ranged options. Meanwhile, Terror ended up being an augment for my second weapon as it allowed me to drain enemies of their health at a safe distance.
That's
hellisus also takes a different approach to healing while in combat. Dealing damage refills your health, but only if you
Yeah, whenever you get it to this point and you still got a lot of enemies, it's almost impossible.
cash in after landing an attack or combo without taking damage. This was a double-edged sword for me, as it's an interesting, unique system, but one that meant
You have to press R1 when the ring lights up at the right time, and you can't be in an attack or getting hit.
would often not worry about how much damage I was taking because I knew that landing 1 or 2 combos would be enough to heal me back up in a pinch. It allowed me to be more aggressive in the hopes of out-healing any damage I took, but occasionally my bravado would get the best of me and lead to either death or finishing a fight with critical health.
Yeah. And then usually when you finish a fight with critical health, you end up just dying in the next fight anyway. Oh my god, there's 4 of them. Jesus.
My strategy had to change as I reached the later acts, with specific enemies that could chain attacks to interrupt or stagger me, preventing me from retaliating or causing me to get overwhelmed by a group. That said, hellisus lacks enemy variety overall, with only 5 types of visually distinct hollow enemies. That is a letdown because I really like their designs, which range from a humanoid with an eerie black void in place of its face
I don't even think the game's very long, to be quite frank.
and chest, to a mage with large ribbed wings that creates damaging zones on the ground. And I was hoping to see the team behind them flex their creative muscles even more. It is similarly lacking in the boss department, with only 2 traditional bosses across the 3 acts. It does have a few gauntlets of enemies to fight through that act as pseudo-bosses for certain areas, but they just don't have the same impact after delving through multiple floors of a dungeon.
It happens.
Thankfully, the roster is padded out with 12 haze-type enemies in addition to the hollows. These don't have the same cool, distinct designs, instead looking like more generic shapes or creatures made of small, colorful blocks. But what they lack in visual flair, they make up for in challenge, as these enemies were often the ones who either overwhelm me.
Those are the ones that'll fucking kill you like pretty quick. They're, especially whenever you get like a chained enemy, like this one's chained to one enemy and that one's probably chained to the same enemy. Like if you get like 3 or 4 of these, or even 5, there's like, it gets hard.
Or give me a better fight. Early on, hollow enemies become entwined with each other and various haze enemies, preventing them from losing health until the attached hazes have been subjugated.
Yeah, you have
This
to.
creates a small dance of taking down the haze and then attempting to defeat the hollow before that haze could respawn, adding a nice layer of complexity to the
There's also a bunch of hollows that could be connected to one haze. I found that to be quite challenging.
otherwise
as well.
simple combat.
Let me guess, a 6. Honestly, at current stance, I'd give the game like an 8 or a 9. I think the game's pretty good. I'm enjoying it.
hellisus is a blend of exploration, puzzles, and combat that, while familiar, pushes you to really pay attention to the world around you in a
You
way
do
that's
have
both
to pay
compelling
attention.
and occasionally frustrating. Its stark approach to quest and map tracking forces you to use your own powers of observation and take notes to solve its challenges, and the puzzles littered throughout the world kept me on my toes more than action-adventure games like this typically do. Though its lack of enemy variety and fairly straightforward combat mean the action sections don't stack up in the same way, there are enough tools
hell
in
is
Remy's
this person
arsenal
able
to
to
at least
jump?
have a good time while taking down its monsters. hellisus doesn't shy away from showing the dark reality of a country ravaged by war while doing so, as well as how the worst parts of humanity are, in the end, more harrowing than our most terrifying nightmares. It holds up a mirror to us and the world we live in, pushing the boundaries of its own audience's
Nah. Man, get up
comfort
outta
in a
here.
way that will stick with me past any of its fights.
Oh, I bet.
For more, check out our reviews of Chronos: The New Dawn or Metal Gear Solid Delta. And for everything